So if you're writing a literature review or a systematic review, today we're going to be diving deeper into the process of how to actually do it and also publish it in a journal. And today I'll be talking with Pratik Wahi, who's a PhD student in architecture in the Netherlands. And his systematic review was recently accepted in a journal. He's now reviewing the paper to get it published. So he'll share some tips with us on like how he's managed to do it and problems that he encountered, how he tackled them. So I think it will be really useful for those of you who might be struggling with writing literature review or a systematic review paper. So thanks for coming along, Pratik, and agreeing to do the interview.
Thank you so much, Marek. I'm thankful for the opportunity given to me. I'm hopeful that the viewers of this video or the interview can have some important takeaways, and they could implement it in their own work. So yeah, thank you so much.
So like maybe before we dive into the to the process of writing the review and some tips, can you just give us a little bit of context, like about your PhD, what you're studying, and kind of like the stage that you're currently at?
Yeah, so well, we all are aware about our rising gas bills, and for obvious geopolitical reason it's gonna rise. And the other thing is that we still use natural gas for heating, at least in the heating dominated countries, for example in Europe. So the thing is that apart from the rising gas bills, these natural gas, which is a fossil fuel, also imparts a lot of carbon dioxide emissions, which as most of the people would be aware about, that they are one of the source of global warming. So what we want to do is that if we want to get rid of natural gas, then what are the other sources, or what are the other ways of getting rid of gas for heating the house? And one of such sources is lower temperature district heating. But as of now, at least in Netherlands, we are really not sure whether our houses, which are existing houses, not the new build, can they be prepared for such an energy transition? And by energy transition, I mean transitioning from this natural gas based heating system to a lower temperature district heating system, which basically runs on renewable sources or less carbon dioxide emission intensive resources. So that's what I am trying to see, is how can we make our houses ready for gas-free heating. And I started my PhD in 2020, so I'm in my third year. So yeah, that's more or less what I'm trying to do in my PhD research.
Okay, so basically, if any of the listeners have very high gas bills and they want to lower them, they should contact you.
Yeah, hopefully, yes, I'll be able to achieve that.
Okay, awesome. So, I know that like recently, finally, your paper was kind of accepted with revisions that you're currently undergoing. So if we backtrack, that was a systematic review paper that you were writing. What was the process like for you, and what were perhaps some challenges that you were facing initially when you started it?
Yeah, so an interesting insight is that it's called systematic literature review because it has a systematic or an organized way of conducting the review. But most people don't think that there has to be a systematic way of reporting or writing this review as well. And that was my biggest challenge, that I followed all the methodological steps of doing a systematic review, but then I was facing a lot of challenges while I was reporting these results, because I found that most of my challenge was related to that since this review has to be critical in nature, what I was writing was more of a descriptive in nature. So it lacked the critical part of the review.
If you want to work with me more personally to regularly publish research papers in high impact journals, then schedule a free one-to-one consultation. The link is right below this video. We're going to meet one-to-one and discuss what your current challenges are, what you want to achieve, and see if this is something that we can help you with.
Review. And you really need to be critically analyzing these studies that you have reviewed in your systematic literature review, because it's important to present the state of the art, and it's also important to present what are the possible research gaps. So just by describing what you read will not give you these kind of insights that you would like to, or let's say these insights that could actually add scientific contribution, right? So these were some of the challenges I was facing, and I was also stuck with the writer's block because I realized, of course, later I realized why I was stuck at this writer's block, because my text was choppy, it was not coherent, and as I said, it was descriptive, so there was no critical analysis. So I was, let's say, I lost a lot of self-confidence if I could write, and it is very difficult. So I think this was my emotional mental state when before I started the course with you.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, I think there's quite a lot to unpack here, and I think some of it might be very useful to other people writing a review who are also stuck with it. And like in my experience, writing literature review, be it as a paper, as a systematic review, or just like as a chapter to your thesis, that's probably one of the biggest problems that I see like PhD students struggle when it comes to writing. And you mentioned that like one of the big issues for you was like that you were being descriptive and not critical enough. But can you give like an example of like what it means, like that you were descriptive, and then how did you become critical? How did you change it?
So by descriptive, I mean that when you start reading these papers, you try to organize your database or whatever you have read so far. So when I was writing these texts of, let's say, on topic A, that I read 10 papers on this topic A, I was basically describing what each paper did. But by critical, I mean that, okay, this is what they did, but what is the meaning? What is the how will it help the major problem that I'm trying to address? What can we learn from it? What are they lacking? What is the research gap they addressed, and what is the research gap you can identify from their limitations or their suggestions? So this is kind of like a critical commentary that was lacking in my earlier texts. That's what I meant by I was being descriptive, and then I realized that I need to be critical.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I've seen that happen quite a lot when people just kind of describe, as you say, what the study did, what the methodology was, what the topic of the study was. But yeah, we don't actually know what it means, what it's useful for, like kind of so what, right? What does this description actually mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you mentioned that, despite it being a systematic review, that there was no kind of systematic writing process that you were confused about. So how did you solve this, or how did we like together on the program solve it? And what tips would you give to people who are trying to figure out how to actually write?
I feel that the main reason why I was feeling that there has to be a structured way of addressing or reporting these results is that earlier I used to think or at least believe that the content drives your writing, right? The content you read or the content you want to write will dictate how you write. But to my surprise, and that was one of the major takeaways or learning while I was working through this course, is that it's also the other way around, that how you write can also dictate your content. And that's where you become critical, right? Because, for example, earlier I started writing, okay, I did this. But then if you think about it, what is the main agenda of this paragraph that you're trying to write? So if you have that in your mind, then you can start writing it again, ultimately arriving to the main apex or main goal of this paragraph that I'm writing. So that's what I meant, that the writing can also dictate your content. So that was something that I think was I realized quite early on, while reviewing my text. And maybe I can give you another example. So um, so just like if any of your viewer is good at playing some instrument, they can relate. I think anyone can relate to it, that when you want to play a wonderful piece, you need musical notes, right? First you need musical notes, and then you need an organized way of playing those musical notes. If you just play all the notes here and there, it won't sound nice. A rhythm or a very nice song or a beautiful song or an orchestra piece can only be beautiful listening when you play it in a certain way. And that's exactly what happens with the literature review, that you did all this, you read all these papers, you have all these different outcomes of these papers, so you have all these notes. But then if you don't organize it in a way, then definitely your paper won't be as beautiful as a wonderful orchestra piece. So that's, I think, on a metaphysical level, is a literature review, I think.
Yeah, love it. I really like the analogy. I think it's a really good one. And like, I think if I can summarize like what you mentioned, the main takeaway is to kind of, for example, if you're writing a paragraph or a section, decide kind of like what is your main point here? What are you trying to tell the reader? And then build everything around it so that you're leading the reader to that main point. Is that kind
Exactly.
of what you were saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, and you also mentioned like writer's block, that was an issue. And I know I've never had that problem a lot myself. Maybe I'm just very lucky that I've never had it, touch wood. But I do know that it's a big problem for a lot of people, that, you know, you're staring at a blank piece of paper, nothing comes out, or what comes out, you're just not happy about it, and so on. So can you tell us a little bit more about like that writer's block that you experienced, and also how you tackled it?
Well, in my case, for me, writer's block is definite. It happens on a daily basis. Like the first few sentences of a new text that I'm trying to write, I will always struggle. How do I start it? What should be the best line? The hook that could drive people to read through the text. So that's what I meant by writer's block. That you try to be so perfect from the very beginning that you don't get any ideas. And that's exactly what I stopped doing. That first you write, and then you focus on revising it. So that's how I got away with this writer's block. I mean, I am not completely I can't say that I've completely solved it, but I do say that there are these kind of tips I started implementing. That first you write something, even if it's rubbish, it doesn't matter. Just write what is there in your mind. Don't care about the grammar or spellings. Just write. And once you have your thoughts out there on the paper, then you can do something with it. And I think it's much better than doing nothing with a blank piece of paper. So that's how I solved it, and that's what I meant by writer's block, definitely in my context.
If you want to work with me more personally to regularly publish research papers in high-impact journals, then schedule a free one-to-one consultation. The link is right below this video. We're going to meet one-to-one and discuss what your current challenges are, what you want to achieve, and see if this is something that we can help you with. Yeah, I think that's an important point. This, like, I sometimes call it the perfectionist delusion, that we try to make things so perfect. And maybe it's also because like people are a little bit scared of getting negative feedback, so they want to make it as good as possible before they send it, for example, to the supervisor, right?
Yeah.
And then what usually happens is that like you rewrite that same paragraph over and over again, and then usually if send it to your supervisor destroys it anyway, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
usually what happens.
And I think I can give you like how the impact, the monumental impact of getting away from this writer's block had on me was like, for the first paper, it took me 1 year to at least get to a stage of having first draft. And I'm currently in the process of writing my second paper, and I started writing 2 months ago, and I already have like three drafts. So it's really important that you start writing. It's okay that you do not have ideas right now, but it will come, and it will definitely come when you have something to apply on.
Absolutely. Well, that's amazing. So like the first paper, you said it took you a year, and now
Yeah.
in 2 months you've already got a draft of what, like 60% of the paper, maybe, or something like this.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So like the third paper, you'll probably write it in a month and submit it.
Hopefully.
Yeah, at that pace. But yeah, I think on PhD Accelerator, on the course that you're part of, I sometimes have to battle with some students that they don't want to send me stuff for feedback. They only want to send it when it's ready. But the thing is that it's not ready, and I see a lot of people that, you are writing and trying to make it better, but it's not getting any better, and you're wasting a lot of time in the process, where you could be like, you could write maybe 1 page or half a page, get feedback on it, improve, and then move on to the next page, and then to the next page, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like it's a perfect example of Parkinson's law, if I'm correct, that your work increases with the time available to you. So in a hope for an ideal situation where you have the perfect text with no feedback, you would keep working on it, and ultimately you will have no time, no energy, and no feedback. So yeah, I mean, even if you have like 3 lines, 4 lines, just send it across. At least you get to know what you're doing good, or what you're doing not good, for example, or what kind of things you can improve on, because there's much more layers of writing than just getting like feedback on content or grammar or structure or like, there are many layers. So you can always get rid of these layers with some small text pieces.
So like we've been talking a lot about the process of writing the review paper, but now you've submitted it, and you've got it kind of accepted, but with corrections, and I know that you're currently correcting the paper. So how's that been for you? What sort of like tips maybe do you have for people who maybe haven't published a paper, would like to publish, and maybe are not sure what the process looks like?
I would really recommend people to start looking at the journal paper from the beginning. Like once you know that this is more or less the main objective of the paper or main objective of the review, I would say that, or advise that parallelly you can start looking at the specific journals where you want to publish. And if you have no clue where to find them, I think the best would be to start looking at the papers you are reviewing already. Where are they published? So this will automatically give you an indication of the kind of journals that you can target. And why I say that it's important to know the journal where you would be publishing, or at least top 3 journals that you would like to publish, is because you can write anything and continuously for 100 pages, but it's not necessary that it's going to be accepted. Because the first hard criteria is definitely your word limit or page limit. So I think it's a very painful task that you have written a wonderful review, but now you have to cut short only because it cannot fit into the journal requirement. So I think that is something that you should start doing it early on. Also, it can help you structure a lot of your paper, because the journal also provide the guide for authors, where they instruct that, okay, this is the way you should submit our paper. So you can already get some idea about, okay, I need introduction, I need materials, methods, discussion results can be same or separate, conclusions. Like, for example, when I had my first draft, my results and discussions were separate. But then when I looked at the journal I wanted to submit in, they said that it's advisable that if you have your results and discussions together. And then I had to, work around in a way that convert these two sections together. So it was an added task of a day or two, but it's still a task. So I think that's what's important, that you should know the journal where you will be publishing, or at least want to publish. Uh, the other thing is that why you need to know the journal, because most of the time when you're submitting these reviews, or any paper for that matter, you also have to submit like a motivation letter or a cover letter why you think your paper is novel enough to be published in this respected journal. So I think if you know these kind of requirements early on, then you can parallelly work on these kind of texts. For example, while you are writing your main review, you know that at this section you have this particular part of the paragraph of the paper, you have mentioned the novelty of your research, that you can easily extract and put it as well as in your motivation letter, and then you can basically kill two birds with one stone. So yeah, that's why it's important that you should keep in mind of journal while you are writing the paper.
Okay, awesome. That sounds really good. And also sort of coming back to this issue of perfectionism, you know, no matter how perfect your paper is, like the reviewers will still have
Yeah.
comments, right? And you will
Yeah,
still have to
exactly.
make changes. So
Yeah,
at the end of the day, you might as well just write and
exactly.
get it done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So you've written this paper and submitted it. You're writing a second paper. So
Yeah.
what's next? What are your plans in terms of publications?
Yeah, so I'm doing a paper-based thesis. And for those who don't know, paper-based thesis means that every chapter of your final manuscript would be one published paper. It saves a lot of time towards the end, because then, yeah, you just need to bundle it with a introduction and a conclusion section, and your chapters are ready. Uh, but it saves time, but it also needs time to do it, because you need to plan everything in advance. So as of now, after I'm done with these two papers, let's say by the end of this year, my next step would be to research and write paper together, which is again, I will come back to the major learning from this course, is that uh, I think a lot of people also don't start writing early on, because they think that, oh, I'll do all the writing when my results are there, or I'll do all the writing when I've collected all the data and I've completed all the experiments. But I feel that you can already start writing, maybe not in the form of a journal paper, but at least in the form of your personal diary of what the things you have done. So I practiced, and I think it worked wonderfully. And I will also practice this to the next part of my research, where I have to conduct some survey, some analysis, but which is not ready yet. I have to do research and develop all these survey questionnaires and everything. But instead of waiting till the end to get the results from my last interview, I think I will start with developing an outline of the paper, saying that, okay, this is the main objective of this particular paper, and these are the kind of results I would like to have. So if I want to achieve this, what do I need in terms of data? What do I need in terms of instruments? What do I need in terms of methodology to analyze this data? So I will already start with these steps, or a pointers, or a storyline of the paper. And then when I'm doing research, reading papers, or talking to other people, then I can already start putting things in these sections, so that when when I'll be done with my experiments and I have my results, I don't have to start from the beginning. Oh, let's see what I wanted to do and things like that. So that I mean, as I said previously, I will use the writing to dictate my content in this way as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you say it. Like, I mean, you know it because you've been on my program, PhD Accelerator. But I'm really big into, like, yeah, you have to start writing on day one. You can't wait until the 4th year of your PhD once everything is done, because then that's how people get burnt out and stressed and not knowing how to write. Yeah. So I'm very glad that you said it. So yeah, well, congrats on all your achievements, Pratik. Very happy for you. And yeah, and I think the 3rd paper, you know, to keep at the pace, you have to write it in about like 4 or 6 weeks, I think, you know, so that you keep increasing the pace, you know.
Yes. Yeah. I will try to do that. Yes, I'm very positive. Yeah.
If you want to work with me more personally to regularly publish research papers in high-impact journals, then schedule a free one-to-one consultation. The link is right below this video. We're going to meet one-to-one and discuss what your current challenges are, what you want to achieve, and see if this is something that we can help you with.